Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you guys are having a good day. So today I'm going to be talking about data privacy, specifically as it relates to cloud computing. So I have a quick question. Anyone in here have a social media account? Okay. Whose account is it? Anyone have an Instagram account specifically? Yeah. Who does that account belong to?
Meta.
Belongs to Meta? Why wouldn't you say it belongs to you?
Well, technically I'm using a platform and they get data.
Okay. What about the personal information itself that's on that website?
It's about me.
It's about you, but it still belongs to Meta? Okay. Yeah, good answer. It's actually a really big debate regarding specifically who data belongs to as it relates in the cloud. So the problem we're going to be going over today, 3 main points. Firstly, we're going to talk about how sensitive data is being stored in the cloud and the impacts of that, especially when it comes to data breaches. Secondly, we're going to talk about how there's a huge disagreement in ownership regarding who owns data, specifically in regards to social media accounts. There's many popular social media accounts and even related health data, for example, on websites that track your ancestry. A lot of people often ask, once I submit my data, can I still remove it in the end? And really, that's where the topic of ownership comes in. And the last point, we're going to talk about the requirements of the cloud providers themselves, specifically in how often, how much they should be securing your data. So the key terms we'll be talking about, firstly, is cloud computing. Cloud computing refers to the on-demand network access to shared computing resources. What that means is that most of our data isn't stored in a local server that we may have in our house, but it's stored in huge data centers owned by these big companies like Meta. So it's the ability to be able to access these resources. And data privacy, this refers to the individual control over sharing and usage of personal information and data. It's going to relate back a lot to your own personal media account when we get to some of the videos. Yeah, so this is the timeline of cloud computing. So cloud computing first became an idea in about the 1960s. There was this guy named John McCarthy, and he had this idea that stated that if we had all of these resources, all of these servers in one place, then everyone would be able to utilize them, not only for storing data, but also to utilize many different functions. Has anyone ever heard about AWS before? Yeah, AWS, one thing it's very popular for, not only do a lot of individuals store their information on it, but also a lot of businesses use it for the functions that they can use to carry out their business activities. Later in about the early 2000s, this is where we see the implementation of it. So although John McCarthy had the idea, it wasn't really carried out, it wasn't really put into practice until around the early 2000s. We see that different websites, for example, like Salesforce, they began using a lot of these AWS functions that all came around the early 2000s to carry out their business activity. In 2023, this is where a lot of stuff began to spark off. So there was this guy called Edward Snowden, and basically what he revealed was that the government can basically scrape a lot of this online data that is stored in cloud computing sources. And it caused a lot of controversy because people began to see, all this sensitive information I have stored on the web. Basically, the government can access it whenever they want. And this caused a lot of controversy. And Edward Snowden was wanted by the government for a really long time and had to seek refuge in an embassy, I believe it was in Russia. And then in 2018, that's where we see regulations begin to come out to protect people from not only the government, but even third-party resources, especially people who track personal information. That's where we see a lot of this governmental support come in. Things like the GDPR, which stands for the General Data Protection Regulation, and the CCPA, which is the California Protection Act. I forgot what the other C was. But this is where we see a lot of those resources, a lot of those laws come into practice to try and protect people by limiting the amount of information that these websites can store. All right, so I'm going to watch a short video regarding privacy awareness, as well as why it's so difficult to try and regulate cloud computing services.
Hello and welcome to the latest in the FT series looking at issues surrounding cloud computing. Now, here's a big question for our age. Just how do you regulate the internet, and cloud computing in particular? One of the main points about cloud computing is showing that you can access your files from wherever you are in the world. But what does that mean in terms of jurisdiction and national regulations? Who actually controls your data? To help me find out, I'm joined by Will Venters, who is a lecturer in Information Systems at the London School of Economics, and James Walker, Vice President of Managed Network Services for Tata Communications. Well, let's start with the main question. How is it even possible to regulate cloud computing?
I think it's one of the big challenges of our time that we have legislation that essentially was based at a time when contracting for computing was a complicated contractual issue, where companies would spend a lot of time developing contracts to go out and outsource. it's not as though we haven't involved the use of IT outside of an organisation for a long, long time. Outsourcing has done that, but those contracts are now point and click, done with a credit card very simply, and how it's going to work. And this is a huge challenge.
It's quite a question to wrestle with, though, isn't it, in terms of where exactly is the cloud? Where are these data centers based? How can you work that out? So how can you apply national regulations in that instance?
Absolutely. And you know, if you're going to work properly, you need two large data centers within a legal jurisdiction. You need one to run and one for backup. And these data centers are multi-billion pound investments. So if you're going to really work this, you can't expect that they'll be located in every legal jurisdiction. And this is perhaps okay for larger legal jurisdictions like the United States or Europe. But if you're a small country, you're going to have to change your jurisdictional demands or your legislative demands in order to capitalise on this.
The challenge indeed, and James, it sounds like a regulatory nightmare. You're president of the Cloud Ethernet Forum, which, amongst other things, addresses the question of how data can remain within national boundaries. But with the cloud, how's that even possible?
A lot of it is about controlling the infrastructure that actually connects the data centers together. So for a long time, computing was all about making sure that your data, when it's being transferred from A to B, got from A to B. Now people are very much more concerned about how does it get from A to B. And for a lot of technical reasons, that applications are sensitive to delay, to distance, and all those sorts of things, but now suddenly it's also jurisdictional and a security concern as well. So we want to, as an industry, get together and define certain standards that allow us to advertise particular routes as being within national boundaries, to advertise characteristics about that route, such as distance, capacity available on it, all that sort of thing, and then give that as a set of primitives that can then be drawn down by cloud service providers, potentially even end users, and so on, to be able to see exactly where our data is going to be stored, and also to request a particular type of service out of the network or service.
Who controls your data? Can you control your data, or is it down to the data centers? How can you track what actually happens to your data and ensure it falls within the parameters that you yourself want to set?
I think it's one of the biggest challenges that IT companies face today is how do they manage that whole problem. On the one hand, the data center operators and cloud service providers are doing everything they can to distance themselves from your data. I just provide a service, I provide an environment, you operate in that environment. It's your problem to comply with regulations, even backups and so on are entirely your problem. I don't want to get involved with that. I'm just an infrastructure provider. But as an industry, we also need to come together and set standards. And the standards say that this is how I can communicate to you how I previously stored this data. And therefore, you need to create an equivalent environment so that I am assured that not only will you store it in a way that's compliant with legislation, but also that it will be carried on in a way that is certain by legislation. We've had customers who have been in terrible situations where, because of the failure of their primary data center, all their data is shifted to the other one, all the applications are happy, everything's still working, but they broke the law. This is not really a situation that even existed 5-7 years ago, so the pace of change is back to how it's going.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for that. I think the key thing to take out is every challenge throws an opportunity. And that's how business works. But thank you very much for a fascinating discussion. If you want to join the conference.
Okay. Right, so the video primarily addressed two key points from the three problems that we were talking about earlier. And the first one is primarily about regulation. One thing they brought up is that although we have the services like Instagram or Snapchat or these other services that a lot of us use, it's separate from the cloud provider. So the cloud provider, that's the main one struggling because they have the ones who have to obey the regulations. The Instagram is just concerned about, hey, you guys can post whatever you want, but that data has to be stored somewhere. So primarily it's up to the cloud provider to ensure that they're meeting the regulations that were set. And then secondly, they address the topic of ownership. So going back to what you mentioned about earlier, Lucky, about how it is Meta's account, yeah, even though it's Meta's account and your personal information is there, it's a very blurred line regarding who actually owns that data. Because if you fully own it, then you have control over who can see it, who can do what with it. But at the same time, that's where the cloud's jurisdiction reigns. So yeah, the lines are blurred a lot between how hard it is to regulate it, because although you may be an American, the data center in which your data is stored could be stored in Europe or somewhere else. And then we're going to address the third point now, which is the cost of data breaches. So specifically, why cloud computing can be very dangerous in certain situations. So I believe in 2010, there was a data breach in Capital One. This was a bank. And yeah, let's see what the video mentioned were the costs.
Build a website you love with Wix. What are your words?
Credit cards are Capital One's specialty. Now,
I want to cancel my card, but it's just scary.
it proves that we're vulnerable. Names, addresses, birth dates, even some social insurance numbers swiped.
With a social insurance number, it's like up in the air. Anybody could be out there using it.
And not just current cardholders are at risk. Applications for credit cards dating as far back as 2005 were also accessed. The FBI says it arrested the suspected hacker, 33-year-old Paige Thompson. Thompson's housemates shared surveillance footage of the arrest with American media.
More or less, from what we understand, is she did it just because she could.
Thompson, who reportedly goes by the online handle Erratic, boasted about the hack, posting, "I basically strapped myself with a bomb vest," dropping Capital One's docs and admitting it. Court documents suggest it was a firewall misconfiguration that allegedly let Thompson break in.
It seemed like a fairly unsophisticated hack in the way that this alleged perpetrator put the information out there on the web using her real name. They know it's...
That makes some cybersecurity experts believe her reasons were personal.
I think one of the motives was, of course, she wanted to be known as the person that, accessed this information. She wanted to get the glorification of her expertise.
It's unclear if any of the data has been shared or sold.
We've seen this from other previous breaches, unfortunately. Literally within 48 hours, there's items for sale.
In a statement, Capital One CEO said, "I sincerely apologize for the understandable worry this incident must be causing those affected, and I am committed to making it right." The company says it has since fixed the problem and will provide free credit monitoring to those affected. More information on that will be released over the next few days. But some cardholders want businesses and governments to be more proactive.
I hope it affects their profits, because that's the only way they're going to listen.
Just the latest company and cohort of Canadians to be caught up in a massive data breach and left to worry where their information will end up. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
The Capital One.
Yeah, so this was a short news article regarding the Capital One data breach and how a lot of people's personal information, not including their bank information, but even their own private data was leaked because of that hacker, because they were able to get in. So this brings up and it highlights a really significant fact about cloud computing, which is the fact that all of our information is essentially shared in the one same server. And if someone bad is able to get into it, they have access to all of our information. Rather than our own personal information being stored on our own personal devices, one of the cons, one of the really big downsides is that the impacts, the cost of a data breach is really significant. Yeah, most data breaches can cause trillions worth of dollars in terms of legal suits, the amount of, and type of information, especially if it's health data. So yeah, this is just another one of the cons brought up regarding cloud computing. So then, looking at the benefits, those who are benefit and those who are harmed. From all the information you guys have seen today, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that there are still major benefits behind cloud computing, or do you think it's more harmful than it brings up? Yeah.
I think it's kind of a toss-up, because there's a lot of benefits, and like you just demonstrated in that video, there's some pretty big consequences if certain things aren't configured correctly, like your information, like your social security is being leaked out, and someone that you don't know has access to that information. But being able to have access to a lot of your information wherever, whenever is also a great benefit. So it's, you can't have everything.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Most of our textbooks even, we don't have to walk around with these huge 1,000-page textbooks because most of them are available thanks to the cloud. But as you mentioned, one small data breach can cause a huge lot of issues. Anyone else? Oh, yeah, Dr. Johnson.
I mean, I was on the internet in the 90s, so before cloud computing, but they could steal your data then too. There's not that much difference. They still can steal your data because of cyber issues or firewalls and things like that.
Yeah, that's a very good point, enhancing or highlighting the benefits of cloud computing, because it's not as though this is just as though cloud computing caused this problem. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's been an issue for a very long time. Yeah, so then looking at the impacts, On the micro level, we can see the huge impact of this is primarily personal protection. A lot of our personal information is out there on the web, stored in these servers all across the world, and it often affects public trust. So as the video mentioned, a lot of people were concerned with Capital One, and they were hoping that their profits would dim a little bit so that they would pay more attention to the individual rather than the company profits as a whole. And then on the macro level, this is where we start to see global policy. So far, we've primarily seen regulations implemented, like the GDPR and CCPA, that affect territories as a whole, but expecting a huge global policy regarding cloud computing and data privacy in the cloud, this could be really beneficial, as well as affecting societal norms. So probably many of you, even the school as well, they mandate that all of you have to make a really strong password when you make your UNC Charlotte accounts. Although it could be something simple that you can remember, norm of society now is that you have to make a strong password as an act of protecting yourself. Okay, any questions? Awesome, so then, we were told not to make a Kahoot, so I made a Wordle game. Have any of you guys ever played Wordle before? Yeah, so basically how it works, we have to guess a word from this presentation. So I'll give you a hint. It's 2 words combined in one. They didn't let you do a space, so it's 2 words combined in one. The one benefit of this one, though, you don't have to type in an actual word. It could just be letters as well. And then you have to discern and figure out what the word is. So you'll see 3 colors. If you see that the letter is gray after you type in a word, I won't click enter, but if you see the letter is gray, that means that the letter is not in the word at all. If you see that it's yellow, it's in the word but not in the right place. And if it's green, then it's in the right word. Okay, so any takers for first? Yeah.
Cloud share.
Cloud share, like that? Okay. Yeah. Data breach. Yeah. So this means that there's a C in the first part of the word, and there's an E in the last part of the word. Remember, it's 2 separate words.
Oh, there's a C, okay.
Yeah. There's an L, an O, and an A in there as well, but they're not in the right place.
Collaboration.
Collaboration. Collaborate. Oh. Am I spelling that right? Is it 1 or 2 L's? Okay. So, you want to submit that?
Sure.
Okay.
We know where E is. So now we know that.
Yeah.
Capital One.
Capital One. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that was the word. Nice. Good job.
Yeah, that's good.